folks, and also you. Would you raise your right hand? You promise to tell the whole truth, nothing but the truth, swear to God?
I do.
I do.
Excellent. I am the hearing officer. My name is Michael McHenry, and I'll conduct this hearing. It looks like you folks are the only ones in attendance. That's always a positive sign from your perspective.
Yes.
And what I will do is I will make a decision based on the evidence that's presented. I will either approve your request or I will deny it. I could conceivably make conditions to it. If I approve it, that does not mean that it's final. It's simply a recommendation. It then would go to the county board meeting. You would then need a 50% approval of all the members at the county board that night in order to pass. If I were to deny it, you would then need a 3/4 majority vote. And who wants to tell me what you're hoping to do?
I do.
Okay, this probably was her idea.
It may have been, yes.
Okay. So what did she tell you to do?
So, thanks, Mr. McNerney. My name is Andrew Venamore, Venamore. I own Heartland Garage Builders. And I met with Jessica towards the end of summer last year, and her plan was to replace a rather decrepit structure that's on the side of her property. I'd just like to present to you photos of that, calling out a couple of the items that are most challenging for this particular project, including the fact that the structure itself, as you can see, is in a pretty sad state. The home is, it's hard to tell if the garage was built at a similar time to the home, but certainly the structure is old and absolutely needs to be replaced. The challenge before us is its current location is not compliant with the side yard requirements for the R1 zoning district in the county, and trying to replace it and come up with a reasonably sized building where we can actually, where Jessica now can actually store a vehicle as opposed to the structure that you see now, while also affording herself a little bit of reasonable storage space, is part of what our challenge is. So the structure at the moment exhibits to the concrete foundation of 1.71 foot setback to that east property line. The proposed project will push that concrete foundation to 2 feet. However, we are building a garage with a 1 foot overhang to preserve and protect the structure over time. The ordinance measures to that overhang, so the setback request is actually a 1 foot setback as opposed to what it is at the moment. So even though we're moving the structure over and away from the neighbouring property line, we still only have a 1 foot setback. What's driving that is, what's driving the non-compliant situation is the interest in keeping the garage there. We've got a large tree in the backyard. If you look at the photo, the best one, I've noticed, I've put a note, current tight separation between house and garage. I've got an arrow showing that, that separation. If you look in the background of that photo, you'll see a pretty large tree that's in the rear yard there. So moving the garage into that root zone will ultimately have a detrimental impact on the tree over time. That was one consideration. And moving the garage across further, if you look at both the first photo on the top left on the first page, and then that same photo on the second page, there is a rear entry to the house with a covered porch feature. Moving the garage further across is just going to make it more difficult to get vehicles in and out of that new garage. We have increased the size of this structure. It's currently roughly a 14 by 20. We've increased the width to 18 feet, and we are increasing the depth to 26 feet. So not only is the driver here to create a legitimate garage where Jessica can actually get her vehicle in, But as you can probably see, based on the size of the house that's there, there's not a tremendous amount of storage space in the structure. It's a little less than 1,000 square feet. And so the driver behind the replacement of the structure is not only vehicular storage, which they don't have at the moment, but also storage for a lot of items that can't be stored in the house. So the garage is getting a little larger to make to give the owner the ability to both get a vehicle and some storage items in that structure. So because of the proximity of both the existing garage and the proposed garage to that neighbouring property line, I asked Jessica to go to the directly adjacent neighbours, and I'll share this with you in just a quick minute. So she has chatted with two neighbours directly to the east, a neighbour to the west, and a neighbour kitty corner to the north here. And she presented this drawing, which I'll show to you in a minute. It shows essentially what you have, Mr. McHenry. It's site plan. It has some of the photos that I've shown you as well. And then it has a rendering of the garage. In the note at the top, it says, I have reviewed this plan for the proposed detached garage at the Wolf residence at 5211 Cleveland Drive, McHenry, and have no objection to it. Those four owners have all signed that document so that the neighbours that were made aware of this process via the notice that the county sent out are all in support of what we're doing. So we'd be happy to answer any questions if you have them at this point.
I do. Are you asking to make this part of the record?
I would like to do that, yes, please.
It will be done. Jessica, how long have you owned or lived on this property?
Since 2018, I bought it in May of 2018.
And the neighbors who are closest to your proposed garage, do you know how long they have owned that property?
They have very recently, like a year and a half, that have lived there. The establishment to the bottom right, is that what you're talking about? That's actually their garage. Is that the individuals you're talking about?
Correct.
Yes. They have been there, I think, now about a year and a half or so.
During the time that you owned this property, did they construct that garage that's next to yours?
No, that's a pre-existing establishment.
Okay. And I'm sorry, I should have paid more attention. Your name was?
Andrew Venable.
Andrew Venable. Andrew, I'm assuming you've looked at the garage that is closest to where the proposed garage would be built, correct?
The adjacent garage, yes.
And you submitted a photograph of that, correct?
Correct.
And you indicated that you had to have a 1-foot overhang to protect the garage, but if I look at the photo you submitted on the neighbor's garage, they do not appear to have that same 1-foot overhang, unless I'm not looking at it correctly.
They probably have a 6. It's hard because it's blocked by the vegetation there. I'm guessing a standard, Mr. McInerney, is a 6-inch overhang. So my company has decided from our inception to build garages with 12-inch overhangs to ensure that any of the runoff that comes down from a roof is kept away, both from the underside of that eave and then away from the foundation. So we've built our garages with 12-inch overhangs, and part of that too oftentimes is an attempt to mirror the architecture on the house, and typically they're at that point.
You also have to keep water on the property that the garage is located,
Correct.
And not to cause it to go to the neighbor's property. What will happen with this overhang in reference to the water runoff?
We have another company philosophy is to put gutters and downspouts on all of our garages. So in this particular case, we have a gable roof, as you see from the drawing, so the gutters will run north-south, and the downspouts will then drop the water, and in this case, somewhat advantageously, will drop it straight into, the water will end up running into the creek that's on the rear of the property. I don't know if you look, there's also a couple of reports from the engineering folks. The garage will be here, the gutters will run south. This is a very low-level creek that has never flooded since Jessica's been there, and then it ends up into the lake here. So the downspouts, the gutters will run north-south with downspouts facing into that south direction.
If you know, or maybe I should ask Jessica, your property is on well and septic, is that correct?
Yes.
Does anyone know where the wellhead is located?
It's in the front yard, isn't it?
My wellhead is on the side of the house.
Oh, is that
If
way?
I'm facing the house, it's to the right, that's what it looked like when I saw the property.
Yes.
Okay. And your septic would be somewhat
It's my, yep.
SUBJ.
It's actually an L formation around the house that's zoned as my septic field.
Okay. And will the proposed garage cause any problems with impinging on the septic area?
No, and that's the other problem, like if we were to follow zoning, it would start impeding into my septic field. So like that's another part, but no, I brought out the plot survey and all that, and we looked at that.
To staff, what would happen if their septic had to be replaced? Would they have adequate area to replace it, or is that an unfair question to ask a person who wasn't expecting that question?
Is this field sized appropriately, I guess?
They would have to work with the Environmental Health Department to figure out how to replace the system.
So right before my house was purchased, it was on the market like in 2015 or something, and it had to get taken off the market because it was not appropriate, the septic field. So they recently just redid all my septic and septic field prior to me buying the house, around 2017 or so. Don't quote me on that, but it was prior to me buying the house that they were able then to legally put it up for sale again.
Very fortunate for you. And you did apply for a building permit, correct?
Correct.
I couldn't hear you, sir.
Yes, we've
Okay.
applied for a
And
building.
there is a pending application, correct?
That is correct.
And what is the position regarding staff regarding this request?
So we do not make recommendations on zoning requests.
Let me rephrase it. Do you have any concerns?
None that I'm aware of.
Okay. For the record, this is the application of Jessica R. Wolf. She is the owner of record. The request is a variation within the R1 single-family residential LN district to allow for a setback of 1 foot from the required 5 feet from the east side lot line for a detached garage. And the subject property consists of approximately 23 100.23 acres and is located on the south side of Cleveland Drive, approximately 700 feet east of the intersection of West Cleveland Drive and Beachside Drive. Common or street address is 5211 Cleveland Drive, McHenry, Illinois, Township of McHenry. Property or PIN would be 0921483012. The current land use designation would be single-family residential, and the property to the north would be vacant. The south would be single-family residential, as would be the east and the west. The property is currently zoned R1 single-family residential district LM. The adjacent zoning would be R1 single-family residential district LN to the northeast and west. To the south would be the city of McHenry. The 2030 plan designates this as residential environmentally sensitive on the land use plan. Property is improved with a 1-story frame residence frame garage to be replaced and a gravel driveway. And there is a building permit K-6322 that is currently pending. Jessica, do you have anything else that you wish to add?
No, just thank you for your time, and I'm
We do-
excited to get a new shed. Garage, I'm sorry, Andrew, garage.
Are you able to put your car currently in the garage?
No, sir.
And would that be beneficial to your neighbors if you were able to park your car in the garage?
Yes.
And some of your neighbors do park vehicles or RVs or whatever on their property in the neighborhood, is that correct? Seems like when I drove around.
At times.
Now, I handed you a list of conditions. It might be better for Jessica to be the one to answer those. So if you could hand that to her.
So this is why I answered this, Mr. McInerney, as part of the application process. So I went through each of those conditions and responded to those.
Your response will be a little different today if you pay attention to the question.
Sure.
Isn't it true that the particular surrounding shape or topographical condition of the specific property involved would result in a particular hardship upon you, the owner, as distinguished from a mere inconvenience if the strict letter of the regulations were carried out? Isn't that true?
Yes.
Good answer. Isn't it also true that the conditions upon which the application for variation are based are unique to the property for which the variation is sought and are not generally applicable to other property within the same zoning district? Isn't that true?
Yes.
This is kind of an older area.
Yes.
And the lots all tend to be kind of smaller.
Overlapping.
Yes. Correct. And the zoning that was in place at the time when your property was approved or built would have been very different than what you find today. Is that correct?
Correct.
And back originally, this would have been more a series of summer cottages.
Yes, sir.
And isn't it also true that the purpose of the variation is not based exclusively upon a desire to increase the monetary gain realized from the property? Isn't that true? You're simply hoping to have a garage that's not falling down and someplace where you can park your car, correct?
Correct.
Isn't it also true that the alleged difficulty or hardship is caused by the ordinance and has not been created by any person presently having an interest in the property? Isn't that correct?
Yes, sir.
You were not the one that originally constructed that garage, nor did you put it in that particular location,
No,
correct?
sir.
And isn't it also true that the granting the variation will not be detrimental to the public welfare or injurious to the property or improvements in the neighborhood in which the property is located? Isn't that true?
Correct.
And if anything, this will be an improvement to the property, correct?
Yes, sir.
And isn't it also true that the proposed variation will not impair an adequate supply of light and air to adjacent property or substantially increase the congestion in the public streets or increase the danger of fire or endanger the public safety or substantially diminish or impair property values within the adjacent neighborhood? Isn't that true?
Correct.
If anything, you'll be improving the value of not only your property, but the various properties in the neighborhood, correct?
Yes, absolutely.
And your garage is really currently very close to the neighbor's garage, but it's not going to cause any impact or impair the supply of light to your neighbor's house, correct?
No, sir. Correct.
And isn't it also true that the granting of the variation requested will not confer on you, the applicant, any special privilege that is denied by the ordinance to other land or structure in the same zoning district? Isn't that true?
Correct.
If your neighbors had a similar request and they asked you, would it be okay? Would you be in agreement with that request?
Absolutely.
Anything else that either one of you wish to say?
No, thank you.
Just thank you for your time.
So, nothing to add to that.
You're not as chatty as Kim. That does not need to be in the record. I did notice that the sign was posted as required. It is an interesting part of the county. I had not been to that particular part before. You are very close to the water. I noticed the kayaks, which is nice.
Yes.
But it appeared to have no land planning of any kind in terms of how they literally chopped up the lots. So I would be in favor of this request. They have met the standards, and it would be an improvement. I'm glad that the septic has been replaced, so we won't have to have a concern with that down the road. With everything that's happening in various parts of the country, I'm always a little bit nervous when you have structures as close as this, but it appears to be appropriate, so I would be in favor of your request. When is the county board?
So they'll be going to the February board, and Kim will be in contact with them with the details.
More likely than not, you will be on what's called the consent agenda with a number of other items, and it'll be voted along with those pretty much on an up or down, yes or no. I would anticipate that you shouldn't have any problems because you don't have any neighbors objecting to it. You can certainly go to that meeting if you choose to do so, but you will not be given any opportunity to talk.
I
Okay?
understand.
You guys are done.
Wonderful. Thanks, Mr. McHenry. Much appreciated.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Perfect.